Welcome back to the 411 Podcasting Network. I am your host, Larry Csonka, and this is episode 45 of the 411 on Wrestling Podcast. You can follow our show on iTunes, Stitcher, Spotify, Google Play, YouTube, and of course the 411mania.com website. Please make sure to subscribe to and share our show around on social media, and if you have the time, please leave us a 5-star review on iTunes. Jeremy is my co-host as always. I like to refer to him as the man that squats 250 pounds, a skilled magician, and he's obviously the Chest Rockwell to my Brock Landers. Jeremy Lambert, how are you tonight?
I didn't understand
Have you never seen
any
Boogie
of those
Nights?
references. If I have, it has been so long, and I've only seen it like once that I didn't get. I'm so sorry. I should really rewatch that because I recall it being a good movie, and I'm a fan of Mark Wahlberg. So
first of all,
yeah,
the cast
I should
is
rewatch
amazing
that.
in that movie because I caught it the other night it was on, so I recorded it, and I was up late writing a bunch of previews, so like various stuff on in the background. Just cast is so good in that movie. Burt Reynolds' hair is amazing. So good stuff. Yeah, you need to rewatch it.
I will rewatch it. But Larry, to answer your question, I am 100% fired up. Not only is it Taylor Swift album week, which
That's
is
like a
the
fucking
greatest
holiday
day
for
and
you.
week of the entire. It is. I've already requested off from all my jobs on Friday, and if they don't give me off on Friday, I will seek the army of Swifties after my employers. So just fair warning to anyone who employs me. I'm taking Friday off. But also, we've got the Wednesday Night Wars, and I'm thrilled for the Wednesday Night Wars. Throw it back to when I was 7 years old, as Dustin James would say.
And yeah, it's the funny thing is like some of the reaction to this has just really puzzled me. Like, there are people that are just like, oh, it's not a big deal, who cares, blah blah blah, and it's like, I don't know about you, this is like a fucking exciting time. I mean, look at WWE. They're going to make more money starting this year than anybody could have ever imagined. Now, whether you're a big fan of the product or not, that is an insane accomplishment what they have done in the past couple years, building that brand so strongly to get these TV deals. Then you have AEW, who comes out of nowhere for the most part. A pipe dream of Cody and the Bucks. And, they run All In with the help of ROH and New Japan, and that's a big success. And then they bet on themselves. They leave ROH and New Japan. They start their own company with the help of Tony Khan. And this company has no TV. This company did over 100,000 pay-per-view buys. They're selling out venues. They're setting up TV in good venues overall. And it's just like, that is really exciting. And then on top of that, you just have everything else going on. I mean, you have promotions working together, like Crash and Noah's going to work with MLW. MLW is back, period. I mean, it's not a great thing, but like the decline in ROH business is fascinating post-Elite. Lucha Underground unfortunately died. Impact is doing their best to fight to stay relevant. New Japan is still rising. And now you're going to have this Wednesday Night War. And some people don't think it's a big deal because, quote unquote, it's only NXT. But it's on the fucking USA Network. And they're going to get paid for it.
The fact that it's on USA Network makes this a big deal. Even if it was on Fox Sports, like, it would still be a big deal. Not quite as big, but still pretty big. If it was on WWE Network, then it would just feel like, okay, it's not really a war because you can watch it anytime, and there's no real comparison because AEW on TNT is going to do, Nielsen numbers. WWE Network is going to do WWE Network numbers. It's on USA Network, like the home of WWE for however many years, the home of Raw and SmackDown right now. And now they're putting NXT on there up against AEW. Look, everyone says the Monday Night Wars, it was the best time in wrestling history, right? Like that's the general consensus.
What a lot of people say.
Now we're getting that in 2019 with all this new technology. And honestly better wrestling. Like the in-ring product is just superior to what it was back then. It's just we have better athletes, better understanding of everything. Okay, maybe some of the storylines aren't quite as good, but it's still an overall like more consumable product, I feel like. And like we're getting that now. And okay, you can say it's only NXT, but there's going to be WWE guys on the show. WWE guys want to go to NXT, and it's on USA. Like this is a big deal. I don't get anyone who doesn't think that this is a big deal. This is a huge deal. This is an awesome deal because we're throwing it back to the Monday Night Wars, and AEW is a viable contender, whether you think they are or not. Like they completely are, and NXT is a viable competitor, whether you think they are or not. I'm so excited for this. The other thing people have to
consider, too, is the fact that, I mean, this isn't AEW on fucking, no offense to Impact, on Pursuit. This isn't AEW on Access TV. This isn't AEW like on fucking Bravo or some shit, or even Spike or Paramount or whatever it's called now. This is AEW returning to the home of wrestling, TNT, and the fact that for the first time since 2001... you have a major network taking a big chance and a big push on professional wrestling. Yes, TNA had Spike TV for a while, but Spike TV was never fully invested in them. This is a big deal all around for everybody, for the companies, for the wrestlers. And Jeremy, we've talked about this, and Steve Cook and I have talked about this. This is not only huge for the fans, but it's huge for the wrestlers. Because if this goes well and this succeeds and AEW can get momentum and keep momentum and become somewhat of a threat, and I'm not talking straight up competition because nobody's going to compete with WWE when it comes to making money and building the brand that they have right now, but they can become a viable alternative and a threat, which means it's a bargaining chip for the wrestlers. I mean, there's no other reason that Jinder Mahal, Mojo Rawley, and the fucking Kanellises are making $500,000 a year over 5 years, and there's no reason guys are being locked into 5-year deals now. It's because WWE doesn't want to let people go, and that is a sign that they're taking this seriously.
Chris Jericho, he's demanding a thank you from everybody, and like part of it I think he's serious, and part of it like he knows the role that he's playing, but he said it like, you know, you're welcome for these bigger contracts. You're welcome for, like, no one's getting released ever again. He said it on Busted Open that, like, Sean Spears is the last guy who's getting his release from that company. Either contracts are coming up or they're not going anywhere because WWE is not releasing anybody. And if your contract is coming up, you picked a good time for your contract to come up because WWE is going to offer you $500,000 or $250,000 or however much over 3 to 5 years. And you're going to make bank because they don't want to lose anybody to AEW. And it's not because, like, honestly, they'd probably be better off because then maybe AEW will push them instead of some of the younger talent, and then they just turn into a secondary WWE light like Impact ended up doing. But they don't want to take that risk of somebody being like a Sean Spears or a John Moxley of, all right, we didn't do this guy justice, and now they're there and they're really pushing this guy and they seem really hot, and you know, we kind of missed out on these guys. So they're not taking that risk at all. And yeah, like, guys are going to get paid. Guys and girls are getting paid off of AEW. And again,
that is nothing but good news for wrestling because I'm all about people getting paid, you know. And to go back to the Jericho thing, there's been a lot of discussion I've seen on this, and you know, there's a big group of people that just think Jericho's being an asshole and overly full of himself. And to be fair, I think there is a little bit of that, sure. But you have to go back and in Chris Jericho's defense, look at what this dude did. He decided to leave, and he goes and he does the Alpha versus Omega match. He helps sell tickets for New Japan. He drives subscribership up to New Japan World. WWE brings him back for what was it, Raw 25 for his little backstage segment, and you know, they bring him back for a Saudi show. And so he's getting paid no matter what. And then he still decides, I'm going to work New Japan. And he continues to do stuff with them. And he, kept reinventing himself. He delivered some great stuff in New Japan. He proved he was a draw. And for people that thought he wasn't a Hall of Famer before that, that really lends credence to him in a Hall of Fame case. Because, we kind of jokingly and not jokingly talked about Hall of Fame on the last show when we talked about Big Tom Ishii. And we talked about various levels of Hall of Fame. And, all-out Hall of Famers are not only great wrestlers, but they're draws and proven champions and such. And Jericho, late in his career, has started to prove that. And that's something that he didn't have a chance or just didn't do earlier in his career. Great wrestler, yes. Title range, yes. But he wasn't a viable draw, and now he has become that. And him making the choice to say, I'm not going back to WWE, and to go with AEW, that's a big deal. Some people are going to completely downplay it. What cracks me up is people are like, oh, he's ungrateful. His contract was up. It wasn't like he left, in the middle of a contract and said, fuck you, I'm not coming back. He fulfilled his obligations. He played the free agent market. He made money. He built a career. He built a name. He took all of that time he invested into it, and now he's reaping everything from that. And that's good. I love to see that, and I think it's very important. And to go back to your point about how he said, WWE's not going to release people because of the fear of people catching on or doing good, I think a couple things that really caught WWE's attention was, number one, the line of sellouts, especially the Vegas sellout they did for Double or Nothing. And because Vegas is a market that WWE pretty much never sells out in. And, they did that in AEW did that in 30 minutes. So you have this big sellout, and then you have other shows selling out, and then Jon Moxley leaves. And I know people are going to argue this, but this dude became the hottest act in wrestling when he popped up at Double or Nothing. He followed that up with the match with Janela, and then he went and had a really good G1. His stock has never been higher, Jeremy.
No, I mean, we did a big podcast on Moxley a few weeks after he showed up at Double or Nothing, and maybe even right after he was announced for the G1 and the New Japan deal. And I said it during the G1 podcast, Moxley has figured everything out. This guy knows himself and presents himself as the biggest star in wrestling and just has his character and his mannerisms down. He just comes off as above everybody else, and not above he looks down on them or whatever, but you can just tell this guy has that it factor and that star quality when he enters the arena. And yeah, WWE is obviously that had their attention. And even Sean Spears, I the Sean Spears stuff is with Cody is fine. I'm not the biggest Sean Spears fan. Would I like to see both guys kind of do something differently? Yes, but they're working a good storyline that makes sense. They've added Tully Blanchard. Arn will probably get added to the mix, probably at All Out, and it's a good storyline that makes a lot of sense given the history between those two and between Arn and Tully. So again, it makes sense. I can't knock that, even if I'm not the biggest fan of Sean Spears' work. A couple points on Jericho. One, he talks a lot, and so he does get messages mixed sometimes. I tweeted today, in May, he said, this is a war whether they like it or not. And then yesterday he's saying, if Vince wants to start a war, we're not about that. We're going to keep doing our own thing. All right, you got to make up your mind on one or the other. And this is why with Jericho, I never know if he's being serious or if he's being promo. But either way, the guy writes me fantastic headlines. And so for that, thank you, Chris Jericho. There's a thank you. You're driving traffic for us because your headlines, the words you say, give us easy headlines. And we all know people don't read. They just want to see the headline and comment on that and not actually read the article. So Jericho makes my job a lot easier in that. And Jericho most definitely, he's made himself a bigger star out of this. Like you said, we weren't sure what to really think of Jericho. Obviously, great wrestler. Obviously, reinvented himself. Like when he jumped ship from WCW to WWE, he was thought to be like a mid card guy. He was right away in there with The Rock, first undisputed champion. Like his longevity speaks for itself, and he always reinvented his character every time he came back. But as a champion, he was never like the biggest draw in the world. And now he goes to New Japan. He goes to AEW. I always think back to Jericho said this on his podcast after he had signed with AEW is Jericho offered NXT to do the cruise. He called Triple H and said, "Hey, can I get NXT guys for the Jericho cruise?" And they dicked him around and they wouldn't do it. And this is why I don't get the whole Jericho was ungrateful thing either. Like, yeah, his contract was up. He wanted to keep working with WWE. He even said, like, I'm not working any US shows outside of WWE. He told Vince about the Japan stuff. Vince signed off with it. Okay, Jericho wanted to do Intercontinental versus Intercontinental title at the SummerSlam after he had won that belt. And he called NXT and wanted them on his cruise, and they didn't do it. And so Jericho had this cruise. So, of course, then he calls ROH. And then he gets linked up with the Bucks and Cody and Kenny, and he hits it off with them. You know, they're talking All In. They're talking Tony Khan. Tony Khan obviously sees the money in Chris Jericho. And without him, I don't know where AEW would be because, yeah, they'd still have, like, the elite guys were obviously very hot from ROH and New Japan. But you add Chris Jericho to that mix, and maybe he likes to give himself more credit than he deserves, but I think in this aspect he deserves a lot of credit.
They needed that name, as you said, and I agree. The elite guys were hot coming out of ROH and New Japan, and I continue to say, and people want to continue to debate this with me. The reason that fucking Madison Square Garden sold out is tickets were on sale when everybody thought all those guys were working that show. Plus the fact that they were going to get New Japan, and they knew they were getting Tanahashi and Okada on that show. So it wasn't, ROH likes to claim that we sold out Madison Square Garden, and I guess from a technical standpoint they did, but it wasn't because of ROH.
ROH didn't do shit to do that. I'm sorry.
They smartly linked themselves with New Japan. But that sellout goes a lot to Cody, the Bucks, and Kenny Omega, and the New Japan crew. So, I mean, like I said, that show was sold out when everybody still thought they were working that show. And, yeah, so they had a lot of buzz. All In was a really good show, and they did well with that with the sellout. But to get on TV of this magnitude, you needed a name. You needed somebody with star power. You needed, unfortunately, in a regard, you needed somebody with a WWE track record that people knew. That could still go and be more than just a... I mean, yeah, people are still going to say Hulk Hogan is a huge name and all that, but you need somebody that can be involved, not just come out and wave to the crowd and say a catchphrase. You need a guy that, if need be, and likely will be, their first champion. You need a guy that is looked at as a star and that can impress the TV networks, and Jericho was that guy. Now, you add that into all the buzz and stuff that the other guys had, and then the financial backing of the Khans, and that kind of ended up being the recipe for success. And that's just the way it worked out. So yeah, it's Jeremy, we're entering into a fascinating time here come October. Obviously, the news came, NXT is going to get the jump on them. And, it's one of my favorite joking lines is another strategic hit by the World Wrestling Federation, Jeremy.
It really is. It really is. The fact that they got this deal together so quickly. And a lot of people are going to say, like, does this deal happen if AEW isn't around? It doesn't happen this quickly. I think that we can all agree on. I think it eventually happens because NXT had been on USA prior. You read the press release. Vince is all about monetizing the product. Like there's money to be made with NXT. And if USA or Fox Sports 1 wanted that product, then they would have done. Remember there was talk when they signed the deal with Fox last year, before All In ever happened, before AEW was even thought about. They signed the deal with Fox last summer, and people were immediately talking, "Oh, could NXT be in Fox Sports 1?" So I think this deal of NXT moving to a network happens eventually. It doesn't happen this quickly without AEW. It probably doesn't happen on USA Network. It probably happens more on Fox Sports 1. But yeah, WWE gets the jump on them. They're going to get 2 weeks early to really establish. And I don't know if that's good or bad, because you're going to get 2 weeks early. You're going to pull out all your stops for the debut show. And then you got to kind of pull out all your stops again for that first show against AEW, because you obviously want to try to cut into their audience as much as possible. And we're going to see how much AEW cuts into the NXT audience, because we're going to know what the ratings are for those first 2 NXT shows. And then we're going to see what the ratings are when they're up against AEW.
I agree with what you said. They were definitely going to eventually end up on a network, likely Fox Sports 1, because the other thing that a lot of people seem to forget is that the WWE deal came because Fox ended up giving up the UFC deal. And UFC provided them a fuck ton of content for Fox Sports 1 and Fox Sports 2. So I think NXT was eventually going to move to Fox Sports 1. And like you said, not this quick, and definitely not USA Network. So, yeah, it's very interesting. And, yeah, it's going to be... I'll be interested to see what the first 2 weeks' numbers are for NXT. Because we have a one-time, 1-hour special baseline from back in December 2017. They did that 1-hour special back then. They drew 841,000 viewers. So that is our baseline going in. That is what we know now. AEW is a complete unknown. We don't know what they're going to draw. It is almost impossible to tell what they will draw. It could be a disaster at like 100,000 viewers. Or they could fucking keep surprising us like with all the sellouts, and they could draw 1 million. I don't know. Anybody that says, oh, they're definitely going to do this or they're going to do that, no, they're definitely going to do this. It's going to be really interesting, and like you said, it's going to be interesting to see how each show affects each other, because they're fighting for the same audience. NXT obviously is garnered towards more of a hardcore fan base. They're WWE's own personal super indie. And AEW is obviously not WWE, which is that's their biggest factor to a lot of people. Because there are so many people that are disenfranchised with the main WWE product. But then again, how many times do you hear people go, I hate Raw and SmackDown and I really don't watch them, but I never miss NXT or a TakeOver. But again, how many people is that? And will they all watch on USA? So again, we won't know until this first 2 weeks. The baseline is 841,000. That's what we know for the 1 hour they did back in 2017. The advantage they do have is obviously they're going to get promoted on Raw because it's on the USA Network. And that is obviously a very good thing for NXT. They are going to have... It could be an advantage or disadvantage of having WWE main roster stars appear on the show. Now, to some people, that is going to be I like Roman Reigns or Daniel Bryan or AJ Styles, or insert WWE main roster star here that's going to appear this Wednesday on NXT. I will watch. And then there are going to be people that go, I'm sick of seeing Roman Reigns or Seth Rollins or AJ Styles or Daniel Bryan or whoever, and they're not going to want to watch because that's not my NXT. So to me, that's a bit of a catch-22, but it is more of an advantage because, again, you're going to pull from the larger Raw and SmackDown audiences, so anywhere from 2 to 3 million people. So if you can get people to watch NXT, obviously, that is going to be the best thing. And the other thing is with AEW, they've started announcing various matches for the upcoming TV dates, which from a fan and reporter aspect, that is great for us. Because we know we have an idea what's coming, we have an idea what to plan for. But also, on the other hand, that also gives WWE an idea of what to counter program for.
Yeah, I think the first show, obviously, it has Cody and Guevara, which that's a fine match, but that's a match where, because you've announced that, NXT can easily counter that with a much bigger match in that spot, and you're like, all right, I'd much rather watch Adam Cole against Velveteen Dream than, and I don't know why you give that away on the NXT program. I'm just throwing out two names, but Adam Cole against Pete Dunne or somebody than Cody and Guevara. Like, so that's an easy counter program there. They got the 6-man tag team match with the surprise partners. It was, all signs point to being LAX, but yeah, they can certainly counter program. They're doing the world title match 1 week. They're doing a women's title match. That's on the first show as well, the women's title match, but they're doing the title defense a couple weeks later. They're doing the tag team title tournament. Because they have announced stuff, it will be easier for NXT to counter program, and because NXT is going to be booked more on the fly, just because that's WWE style compared to AEW, where they're already announcing matches a month out, 2 months out really. So they might be a little bit more rigid with how they're going to put together their shows. So that might work to WWE's advantage. One thing on the baseline number, because it's 2017 and WWE ratings have dipped just in general since then, it's a baseline. I'd probably drop that a little bit lower. Like, I don't know what the expectations are going to be. I think so. What was the baseline? 841. I'd probably drop that to like 775 or something, just because, the viewership numbers have dipped since then. And I really don't know what we're going to get from NXT or AEW. The AEW one is sort of more fascinating to me because all signs kind of say like it won't be great, but this company has defied expectations so many times that I will almost feel disappointed if it's not like 1.5 million, even though I realize that's stupid. Like, expecting 1.5 million is just dumb. But because this company just keeps selling out and keeps doing these monster numbers, it's like, why can't they do 1.5 million? Again, I don't know how anybody is going to take that. I realize it's stupid. I don't think they're going to do it. But at the same time, they've defied expectations so many times that if they did it, I would be like, yeah, that would be very shocking. I think a good number for AEW would be 500, and maybe even that's a little bit too high because we got to see what the NXT numbers are first. And then, it comes into that thing of, during the Monday Night Wars, you had 6 million people watching, 7 million people watching. And so when WCW got bought out, everyone just thought, well, now 7 million people are going to turn into Raw. And it's like, no, it's still only 3-4 million turning into Raw. Those other 3 million just sort of disappeared. So let's say, for argument's sake, NXT does 1 million on their first 2 weeks. So you think that, okay, well, now 1 million people are going to watch. Let's say that gets cut in half. Now both shows are going to do 500,000. And what it could end up being is NXT still does 1 million, and then AEW does 700,000, and you're like, shit, now there's 1.75 million people watching wrestling on this night. So the fan base thing is going, and if you listen to Meltzer's report, it's like there's not a whole lot of crossover with WWE and AEW, but obviously NXT would probably have a little bit more crossover. So I'm going to be very fascinated by these ratings.
I'm really interested. And you brought up on the one show they have the 6-man tag with the Elite versus Jericho and his mystery partners, and I'm going to be really interesting to see if they counter program with something like Undisputed Era versus the OC or something that night.
And that you made a good point of like, okay, do you want too many WWE guys? Like, this is the third time this week we're seeing Roman Reigns or Seth Rollins. I don't know if you're going to get that. I feel like NXT and Triple H are smart enough to realize, let's not have like a Roman Reigns. Maybe we have a Seth Rollins. Let's bring in a Kevin Owens. Let's bring in a Ricochet and AJ Styles, who's never been to NXT. Samoa Joe, a Nakamura, former NXT champions who kind of have that cachet with the audience and who the audience, like the NXT audience, wants to see. Like they'd kill to see Ricochet back down there and facing Adam Cole again. They would love to see AJ Styles at Full Sail. Like the indie guys who are there who are like, okay, these are our guys as it is. We want to see them back, as opposed to a Roman Reigns who, he was in FCW, but isn't really considered an NXT guy. Rollins obviously is, but he was very first iteration NXT, and so isn't really associated with the kind of the new era NXT. But I think Triple H is smart enough to realize who his audience wants to see and who maybe, this might be. But
you have to remember, this is on the USA Network, which means Vince is going to be heavily involved. And if he doesn't like the ratings, he's going to put on that show who he thinks are his big stars. And that's Roman Reigns and stuff like that.
I agree. I'm not somebody who is just thinking Vince is going to put his fingerprints all over this, because reports are already that he's not going to be there every week. He might not even be there for most weeks. Like, he's already been missing Raws and SmackDown. If you watch Raw and SmackDown lately, and obviously I know you do, and I feel like everyone who listens to this podcast does, there are less Vince fingerprints on these shows. You can see the Heyman fingerprints, you can see the Bischoff fingerprints, and they're much better shows. Vince is, he missed television this week because they got the big XFL announcement tomorrow, but today, by the time some people might listen to this, the XFL, he's going to be heavily involved in the XFL stuff coming up. He's probably going to be more involved with SmackDown since that's on Fox, and I think he has enough faith in Triple H, because that's his not technically blood, but that's his blood by marriage, to where he might be a little bit more hands off with this product than he is even with how he is with SmackDown and Raw right now, because it is Triple H's. So I'm not someone who just thinks Vince is going to come in there and completely just ruin everything. It's not so much
ruining, it's the fact that knowing Vince, the thing is with it being on USA, he wants this to succeed. He wants this to beat AEW. He wants this to get good numbers. And if the numbers aren't where he wants them, he will rewrite things. He will start changing things, and he will put people in the position that he wants them in. So that's kind of what I worried about. Another interesting thing to consider is they announced that they're going to be taping from Full Sail every week, which is really interesting because you always hear them talking about how they don't like to run smaller towns and smaller arenas. And so you're to be on USA Network with Full Sail University, which is about a 400-seat arena. And so in theory, you'd think that they'll sell each week easily because they're going to be on TV. But if AEW is running bigger arenas and is looking better, I wonder if they're going to be pressured to take NXT on the road to bigger venues.
That is I don't know how to feel about that, because you're right. Like, running from Full Sail every week, it could start to feel kind of Impact Zone-ish, and the crowd is certainly hot. Like, the Impact Zone crowd was very hot for the most part, but then it got to the point where they just wanted to start to get themselves over, and Full Sail had done that in the past. It's gotten a little bit better lately over the past few years, but there was a point where like the Full Sail crowd was just kind of bad and just kind of cheered for themselves and try to pop themselves more often than not. And AEW is going to keep running these bigger venues, and they're going to probably keep selling them out at least for the first couple of months, and then we'll see after that. But I think the product will tell more. Like, I personally, and maybe I'm obviously speaking for myself, I don't know if I'm speaking for a larger audience here. Like, I don't care about the the attendance when I'm watching these shows. Like, I realize Raw and SmackDown attendance are down, but like the Raw crowd last night I thought was hot from start to finish. And okay, maybe it wasn't like, you know, a complete sellout, but they were making noise for everything. And so I would think that the NXT audience is going to make noise for the majority of the show, and that might come off better on television than you might have 10,000 people in the arena. But if those, you know, if half the arena is not really making any noise and you're not popping the audience, like on television, that might not come off as strong because it's like, okay, well, this arena looks pretty full, but it's also kind of silent. So I think NXT will be smart to run Full Sail at the start because they will probably sell that out every single week. That audience is going to be hot, even if it's not 100% sold out every week. And it might come off better on television just because that crowd is going to be livelier. And, you know, if AEW, if they're running 10,000 fans and they're hot every week, then sure, that's still going to come off great. But NXT is kind of a more guarantee to just have that hotter audience for television.
I kind of don't care as long as it looks good on TV and that you have responsive crowds. Now, if for some reason, like a month or two in, the crowds start diminishing, they aren't into the shows as much, then I think you have to reevaluate, because like you kind of brought up the Impact Zone, and yeah, there were times where the Impact Zone was absolutely great, and then there were times where the Impact Zone was just shit. They didn't care, they tried to get themselves over, and so if you start losing investment in the product, then I think you switch it. But the advantage WWE has is obviously they know how to shoot Full Sail, they know how to make it look good on TV. So again, as long as it looks good and the crowd is into it, I really don't care. I mean, you know, I always think about Arena Mexico. You know, CMLL has run there for for eons, and it's like they know how to shoot the place. And when the building's full, it looks great. You generally get hot crowds and stuff. And the biggest advantage they have, obviously, is they own Arena Mexico, so they make all the money off of it. But it's just, yeah, I generally don't care. Is like, I brought this up with Impact. People were like, oh, yay, they sold out 700 seats. Big fucking deal. It's like, well, they sold 700 seats, which is more than they were doing in years past. Number 2, it looked good. Number 3, the crowd was into it. So you got to take victory where you can get it. And like you said, yeah, it's great if you sell 10,000 tickets, but if the crowd isn't into a show, I mean, yeah, it might look good, but if the crowd isn't into it, that can really kill the atmosphere of a show really quick.
Yeah, we've seen WWE shows, like, for the most part, WWE is still drawing, like 8,000 people for Raw and SmackDown, and that might even be shortchanging them. But some of those shows, the crowd is just not into a lot of stuff. And WWE knows how to shoot the audience. Like, if you watch the show, the entire lower bowl always looks full. And okay, the top half is tarped off. But for the most part, like, those audience looks full on television. But there are some shows where they're just not that into it. And AEW, I'm not saying this is going to be a thing, but if they're drawing 8,000 to 10,000 people, and if that crowd isn't into it, then for TV, even if it looks full, if the crowd's not into it, it's not good. So I want a crowd that makes noise, and I assume AEW is going to know how to shoot the arena. Like, ROH obviously has this problem. They don't know how to shoot the arena, so you see that the 3/4 of the building is empty, and the crowd's not making noise anyway, so it just comes off terrible. You're right. If NXT Full Sail the audience kind of starts to dwindle, then maybe they start taking it on the road. Still run kind of smaller buildings, but at least it'll be presented in front of a new crowd who could be really into it. But I just don't know with NXT. Like, they tour, they do good numbers at like house shows. Like the one we went to, it was at the same arena that NWA ran for the Crockett Cup, and I would venture to say that the crowds were pretty comparable for the house we went to years ago when Nakamura had just debuted in NXT, and then the Crockett Cup was obviously earlier this year. The crowds were, as far as how many people were in those buildings, were pretty comparable, so they can maybe keep running smaller arenas like that, and in front of a new audience, those crowds will still be hot. But then you look at like WWE house shows, and like no one is there. We don't know how hot those crowds are because they're not on the network and they're live events, but they're obviously pretty dead arenas if you judge it by the Twitter pictures. So the crowd stuff, as long as the crowd is making noise, I'm not really too concerned where they're going to be run, because as long as the audiences, the people that are there are into it, that'll come across better on television.
So, and the other interesting thing out of this too is that NXT is now going to be a money-making product because this TV deal is rumored to be about $50 million, and that is. Everybody, the big knock I always hear on NXT is like, well, yeah, it's great, but they don't make any fucking money. Well, the thing is if you're trying to build future stars, you have to be willing to take a loss, number one. Number two, it is what it is. It's developmental. Ohio Valley and them, when they invested in those, they didn't make money for WWE either. But the whole performance center and everything, this is an investment in the future, and you have to be willing to take that loss. But yeah, now you're going to be making money, and I hope that for the, if this is going to become like a viable third brand now that it's on, a network, on the USA Network, and they're making this money, I hope not only everybody gets a pay raise, but I hope the top guys start getting paid like top guys.
I would hope the same thing. Obviously, we're probably never going to be privy to that information, but they certainly should get a raise. Like, you would think that the Coles, the Garganos, the Dreams, even like the Riddles, like he was featured on the poster, Baszler, these people should get more money out of this. And this is why I think NXT to a network station was always inevitable, because they wanted this company to make money at some point. They weren't going to keep feeding into it if it was going to keep losing money, and they built up enough good equity with the fan base. Like it has a rabid fan base, and they built up enough good equity with even their television shows. Like the weekly programming is very easy to consume and digest, and I assume we're going to talk about maybe the changes in a 2-hour product, but the weekly shows were easy to digest. The takeovers were obviously a home run every single time. At some point, this was going to be on a network station, so they could turn this into a moneymaker. And now they're getting at least $50 million in rights fees here. So yeah, it's a moneymaker now. And yeah, hopefully it turns into more money for the actual wrestlers.
So I guess the next question is, Jeremy, is how do you think this is going to change AEW's approach to producing TV?
If you listen to Jericho, it's not going to change it at all. A lot of the AEW guys are saying we're just going to keep focusing on ourselves and do the best product we can, and that's that. Let our product speak for itself. I think that's the best approach, honestly. Like, the one thing I really don't want, and I don't think NXT is going to do this, because they're a WWE brand. They know that they don't need to do this stuff. Outside of that weird Sami Zayn mentioning AEW thing that went absolutely nowhere, they typically don't take shots at the competition, because at least since the Monday Night Wars, because they don't view anybody as competition. And obviously they've never had competition like AEW. Sorry, Impact. But I think they'll, for the most part, stay away from that stuff. AEW, some of those guys, and I'm specifically thinking Cody and maybe even Moxley and Jericho and Shawn Spears, I don't know if they'll be able to help themselves with taking shots at NXT. I don't want that. And Jim Ross, I'm kind of worried about him. He might just, he's got pretty free reign. He might just take those shots because that's what he does. And he doesn't have much of a filter nowadays with a lot of stuff. So I don't want to see that. I think that will make them come off a second rate and make it look like they're just, trying to punch up to Big Brother, and they don't need to do that. I hope they focus on their own product. I think from what we've seen from their 3 shows, they have a very good product. I like a lot of what they're saying. I like the Rosu shows, whether it be Double or Nothing or All Out, have been awesome. Like the promos they're cutting, the build-ups they've been doing have been awesome. Being the Elite can be hit or miss, and I don't think we're going to see kind of that comedy stuff on their weekly programming. I truly hope that they focus on their own product though and stick with that.
That's the opinion I have. I hope that it doesn't. The only thing I would hope for it to change is that they keep locked in and they keep their focus on whatever their game plan is. And if the only change is that they're more aggressive on their game plan and staying focused, that is fine. But I don't need Cody out there breaking thrones. I don't need Sean Spears talking about when he was back up north. I don't need Jericho talking about having to clean up the Stephanie's dog shit. I think AEW is far from a perfect product, but I've greatly enjoyed it overall so far. I like a lot of what they're doing. I like a lot of what they have planned out for the TV. And I've said this for a long, long time, Jeremy. We've talked about this on the show many times. I love variety in anything that I watch, be it movies, TV, my wrestling. Variety is the spice of life, man. I want whatever Impact is going to be Impact. I want whatever MLW is going to be MLW. I want whatever ROH can be to be ROH. I want New Japan to be New Japan. Whatever WWE is going to be, I want it to be that. I want AEW to have an identity, lock it in, and deliver the alternative that they've been promising. And that's all I want from them. I don't need them running up to the gates in a fucking Jeep and call it a tank 20 years later. I just want them to put on the best damn show they can. Because if I'm going to invest 2 hours a week, I want quality TV. That's all I'm asking for. I wrote in my column something to the effect of I talked about the spice of life line. It's WWE salt. It's everywhere. Too much salt is not only bad for you, but it gets bitter after a while. I want some sugar. I want some garlic. I want some pepper. Dare to be different. Be whatever you're going to be and be the best at that. That's all I want. And I want that for every company. Whatever the fuck you are, find your identity, stick to it, and deliver. So that's kind of the bottom line for me.
You mentioned the Jeep that transformed into a tank after 20 years. We know NXT is going to be running at Full Sail. We know AEW's home base is Jacksonville. They're not that far away from each other. Whenever they run in Florida and it's coming, they're gonna run in Florida at some point. They're probably gonna run events. They're gonna be running their TV show. I don't need any of that stuff at all. If you're in Florida, you don't need to be the show down the street or whatever. Don't worry about that stuff. And yeah, the guys I mentioned, I'm worried about. I'm truthfully worried about Jim Ross because I could see him dropping a lot of the other company and that company and Up North and the other program tonight. Don't need it. I'm not worried about. Maybe I'm worried about Mauro Ranallo doing that too. He's gonna just drop a bunch of pop culture references and talk about second place or something. I'm with you on the stick to your game plan thing. And okay, if you gotta take a more aggressive approach to your game plan, fine. Don't get too caught. And this is where WCW went completely wrong. And where WWE, a reason why they ended up winning the war is they had more of a long-term vision. And so they stuck with that. They finally, they had to pull themselves out of a rut, but they had a long-term plan. And so they saw that, and they ended up winning the war. WCW, the moment they lost 1 week in the ratings, they're give them Goldberg and Hogan on free TV. Neither company can afford to do that. I think this goes for both companies, honestly, is both of them just stick to your long-term plan and see who wins out. If those first ratings come out And maybe we'll make predictions later on. Like for right now, I think NXT ends up winning the majority of the first weeks. Maybe not the very first week AEW is on TV, because there will be that curiosity factor. But I think for the majority of that first month, NXT is going to win most of them. But no matter who is winning the first weeks there, both of them cannot react and be like, well, now we have to do this. And you're right when if NXT loses 2 weeks in a row, Vince might be like, put Roman Reigns on the show, pay Brock another $2 million to go on the show, like whatever it is. Neither company needs to do that, and AEW can't do that either. If they lose those first few weeks, they can't be like, all right, let's hotshot this angle, or let's do this. Like both of them, I want to see them stick to a long-term plan and not like dismiss the ratings, but realize that it's not everything, because WCW got too caught up in ratings are everything, and they could have kept existing and doing well. Potentially, they were losing a lot of money because they lost a lot of money because they did put so much stock in ratings and they hotshotted so much stuff. Ratings are not everything, especially nowadays, and maybe that's a little bit more difficult for AEW because they are kind of getting paid more on viewership. So the more viewers they pull in, the more money they're going to make. For WWE, you got your rights fees. You don't need to, hotshot anything. Just stick to your plan.
For me, the ratings are a metric for the fact that, like, if you're AEW and you're 3 weeks in and you realize 3 weeks in that every time insert wrestler A, I'm not going to throw a name out because I don't want to bury anybody. I mean, every time wrestler A pops up on TV, we lose 20,000 viewers. Well, then maybe you need to take wrestler A off the show and retool things. That's where the perfect example. But that's fine.
I'll bury them.
For me, that's where, like, for AEW, that's where I would take notice of the ratings. I'm not going to worry about, like, if we're losing a couple weeks here and there, but like you said, if the librarians pop up on TV and people are always turning on, get that shit off the TV. In fact, I don't ever want to see it on the fucking TNT because it's horrible. It's like the dirt worst fucking thing in wrestling. I don't want to see it. So it's like, yeah, but I mean, that's where I would be concerned ratings wise. If you have acts that pop on and you're always losing audience, then you need to rethink things, especially if they're getting a lot of time. So, and you brought up just earlier, changes to NXT. And that's going to be really interesting now because obviously we're going from 1 hour to 2 hours. A lot more time. And the first thing to me that is the biggest thing that can change is there's potentially a lot of opportunity for people. Because there's been a big push over the past couple years to get NXT to be a 90-minute show or 2 hours on the network, because of how loaded that roster is. And that was never more evident than when you see, like, house show results and you see all these names that are never on TV. You see all these other women that never make TV. And then, like, they ran the breakout tournament. And these are 8 quality guys that had never seen TV yet. So you see how deep the roster is. So the first thing is in theory, there's going to be a lot of opportunity for guys to get TV time and step up.
Yeah, it works two ways. One, the good thing about the 1 hour weekly NXT, I fully admit I rarely watched week to week. I kind of do 3, 4, or 5 episode binge watches. I got so far behind prior to this last takeover that I think I binge watched like 8 episodes before this most recent takeover. So it's easily digestible 1 hour program. But it did feel, I didn't watch week to week because a lot of it did feel sort of skippable, and that's not necessarily a bad thing. It's just like, okay, you know what's going to sort of happen. And spoilers, I have to do the spoilers, so I knew it was going to happen on the programs anyway, so it was like, all right, since being live is going to change that, since there will be no spoilers, there won't be a thing of, all right, I know what's going to happen. I'm more likely to just tune in to a live program over a program that I know what's going to happen regardless. But the 1 hour thing was beneficial in that guys were given a chance to breathe. You didn't see Velveteen Dream every week. You didn't see Matt Riddle every week. So when you did see him, it's like, oh, cool. It's good to see Matt Riddle again. Now with 2 hours, you're probably going to see Matt Riddle every week. And, that's okay. Matt Riddle's cool. Velveteen Dream is cool. So in that sense, like, it hurts a little bit in that guys won't be given as much time to breathe. But in the other sense, you're gonna like this roster is so deep. You got like Keith Lee, who's like barely given a chance, and some of that I guess has been some injury stuff, but he came in really hot. Damian Priest, who's getting more shine now, but he was a guy that they seem to have big plans for.
Kushida.
Everybody. Yeah, Kushida, like he's just kind of there. Everybody in this breakout tournament, like we saw Shane Strickland on 205 Live tonight. I guess Isaiah Scott, whatever his name is. We saw him on 205 Live tonight. Like they have so much talent, and now those talents are gonna actually get a chance, because that was an issue with the 1 hour shows is, all right, guys like Matt Riddle and Velveteen Dream got time to breathe, but they got time to breathe for the Adam Coles and the Shayna Baszlers, and you kind of just rotated those two groups, and it's like, okay, it's still sort of the same guys. Now you're actually going to get new guys and girls on the show, and you make new stars this way. Look, I just want Stokely Hathaway, Malcolm Bivens, whatever he's going by. I want him on my television every week. Put him up against anything AEW does, and NXT's
Goddamn right,
win.
dude. I keep saying that if he gets on TV, he's going to quickly prove that he's one of the best promos in the whole company.
Without a doubt, I want the CD player storyline on the USA Network. I pair him with whoever you have to pair him with, but I hope this now puts Stokely, Malcolm on television, because they have the 2 hours to utilize a guy like him. Like he's been in developmental for a while, and we haven't seen him. Maybe he popped up in the crowd during the breakout tournament, but we really haven't seen him in a major role. You have 2 hours now. You have no excuse not to use this guy every week or every other week. And it's the same with a guy like Kushida and Keith Lee and Dijakovic and these other guys. Like, you now can really use these guys, and I feel like you're going to see more people coming back as well. Like we've seen Tyler Breeze and Fandango coming back. Everyone loved Tyler Breeze and Fandango coming back because it's like, oh, they're in NXT now. Awesome. But they were essentially taking TV time from other guys that you may have wanted to see. Now with 2 hours, everybody is going to have a better shot at just getting weekly television.
And that kind of brings us to the next point, and I agree with you, is main roster involvement. We're going to see some main roster involvement with it being on the USA Network. And again, like I said before, it's going to be kind of a catch-22 because it depends on who you use. And like you said, bringing back various NXT names that were really popular and may not be doing a lot, like pop in a Ricochet and an Aleister Black or an Andrade, crowd's going to love that. And then you have other things like you said, AJ Styles was never in NXT. AJ Styles comes on that, you have AJ Styles and Velveteen Dream or AJ Styles and Adam Cole. And then like another one for me is just like, there's so many guys I'd like to see Daniel Bryan wrestle in NXT. And, put him down there. I mean, shit, setting Buddy Murphy down for a fucking match with Kushida. Just, there's all kind of cool shit you can really do. So that's the kind of stuff that makes me excited. But again, and like you were bringing up, you have to be careful who you use and that you don't overuse it, because you don't want to take time away from your Kushidas, your Keith Lees, your Dijakovics, your Stokely Hathaways, your Damian Priest. I wanted to call him Judas Priest, but you don't want to take time away from those guys that are going to be like your next wave of stars whenever you're done with Gargano and Cole and stuff like that, and Dream and Strong and Pete Dunne and stuff like that. So it's going to be a delicate balance, but it's going to be in many ways an advantage because, again, if you announce like 2 weeks out that in 2 weeks Adam Cole has issued an open challenge for the NXT Championship and Daniel Bryan has answered that call, I'm watching that fucking match. I mean, cool shit like that. So again, it'll be a delicate balance, but it's also a really exciting thing to think about.
I think NXT will be treated more as a third brand now, and it should be. It should have always been treated as a third brand, and I think over the past few years, it certainly has been transitioned more that way. Like less people view it as developmental. It's kind of on the contrary, where more people want to go to NXT than be on Raw or SmackDown. But it is a third brand now. I really hope they just shake up the rosters prior to the move to Fox. Get rid of this wild card nonsense. And when I say shake up the rosters, I mean actually shake them up and actually stick to this instead of, all right, this guy just kind of needs to be on this show this week. Like we watched SmackDown tonight and Sami Zayn comes out with Shinsuke Nakamura, and it's like, okay, well, if Sami is Shinsuke's mouthpiece, but Sami's on Raw and Shinsuke is on SmackDown, so does that mean Sami is a SmackDown guy now, or can he just show up? I guess wild card rule, bitches. But and then Miz, I thought he was a SmackDown guy, and someone on Twitter told me like, yeah, Miz is actually on Raw. Like that's how jumbled these rosters feel right now. Actually shake them up. Move some NXT guys that are down there to Raw and SmackDown. I think you're more able to move a guy like Gargano now because it's more of a sideways move, and with Raw and SmackDown being run by Heyman and Bischoff more, people might be more acceptable to it, especially if you put like Aleister Black back on NXT. I don't think that's going to happen because of he's married to Zelina and she's probably going to stay on SmackDown unless Andrade moves, and then you got to move Charlotte, so relationships complicate things. But you can now move some of these NXT guys. You can maybe move a Keith Lee to Raw or SmackDown, and then move guys who aren't doing as much on Raw or SmackDown and move them to NXT. Like Ali kind of went nowhere on SmackDown. He should have been feuding with Shinsuke. It looks like that's been dropped. Move him to NXT. Like Ali would be great on NXT. You can really set in stone. You have 3 brands now. You have all this talent in the world. You can really set in stone these rosters, and you don't have to cross brand anything to where you've got Roman Reigns on both shows taking up time from somebody else that on Raw that could be used, like the Viking Raiders. Put them back on NXT for the love of God. Really set in stone these rosters and treat it as the third brand that it should be, and not WWE ECW and that nonsense. But I hope that's what they do. We will certainly see if that's what they do, but I think that could really be beneficial to not only just the brands and the identities of the brands, but just the wrestlers.
Yeah, and
as
I
well.
agree with that. I hope that if they do kind of do that and they treat it as a third brand and they mix some things up, that they keep it locked in. And we keep hearing the rumor that that's going to be the case come October. But that's, for me, that's a believe it when I see it thing. Because everybody keeps going, oh, no, it's going to be fine this time, Larry. You just have to have some faith in the booking. And I'm sorry, they give me no reason to give them faith in things like keeping control. And that's like when somebody goes like, well, why don't you think WWE could run a G1? And I always say they could run a G1 talent-wise. But I have no faith in them actually plotting one out and sticking with it like New Japan does. Because that's too much thinking forward.
No, I completely agree. I hope the brand split, or not the brand split, the wild card thing ends in October or prior to October, whenever. But I'm with you. I will believe that when it actually happens.
One interesting thing I saw floated around is that with NXT going to USA, and obviously you can do a lot of crossover, I saw one match that kind of looked really cool for War Games, which was Undisputed Era versus the OC with Finn Balor. Yeah,
I'm all for that. You can do so much with this cross-brand stuff, because if you do actually keep these guys away from each other for the most part, you're not just burning through matches. Like there's so much talent in NXT that hasn't faced the main roster guys. Like everybody wants Kevin Owens to join Undisputed Era, or a Kevin Owens Adam Cole match. Everyone wants an Adam Cole against AJ Styles, or Gargano against Styles, or Daniel Bryan against Matt Riddle. There are so many good matches you can do that you haven't done yet, and you don't need to do just to do it. Like you can really keep a lot of dream matches alive, and save them for these pay-per-views, save them for these takeover specials and stuff. But the only way to do that is if you don't have WWE guys show up to NXT every week. You don't have NXT guys, and I don't think it'd be necessarily a complete bad thing if you got an Adam Cole showing up on Raw to kind of promote the brand a little bit, but you can't do it every week to where guys are on the same show, the same two the same shows every single week. Like you can't have Roman Reigns 3 times a week. You can't have Seth Rollins 3 times a week. Even as much as I love like Gargano and Cole, can't have them 2 or 3 times a week. Like keep that stuff separated so when they do show up, it means a little bit.
I completely agree. So I guess the next thing to talk about is the network is losing NXT on Wednesday nights, which was the Wednesday night anchor, and every week was one of the more popular shows. So what does WWE do to replace that?
Well, we know they're going to do the tiered network, and we know they have really good relationships with Evolve, Progress. I'm missing WXW, and there's ICW. Like, yeah, they've got good relationships with a lot of companies. They're still talking to other companies as well. So like that stuff at some point is going to come to the network. I think putting Evolve as a network special the last month was the step in that direction. Getting Evolve on there, getting Progress on there, that's 2 big steps right there. And I think we're going to start seeing that. As far as just the immediate Wednesday night future, I wouldn't be shocked if NXT UK just gets moved to that time slot to be more viable to the American audience. Like it's still on demand. Could the UK fans watch it live then? No, because it would run at like 1 o'clock, 2 o'clock in the morning or something. If they really want to keep up with the product, watch it on demand. I don't know how many like fans are watching NXT UK in the first place in the UK or in Europe. So I think that is the move to make right now, is to, because you still want to have that 8 o'clock time slot for something special. And right now that seems to be about the only thing they can seemingly do, is just move NXT UK, bring that more to the American audience. And I mean, the takeover special will have aired by the time NXT moves to. But actually, now that I think about it, that's a dumb point, because why would they want to put live wrestling on the network against their own product anyway? So I think actually now like the 8 o'clock product is just going to be. It's just going to be a show. I don't know what it's going to be. I still think moving NXT UK to a more viable time slot makes a lot of sense. And at some point in the next few months, we're going to see these independent promotions pop up on the network to have that live wrestling fill that is now gone with NXT moving.
Yeah, it's going to be really interesting. I have a couple choices. You could alter the taping schedule and move 205 live, because with SmackDown moving to Fridays come October, that might be a good place, so you're not having another show later in the evening. But there's a lot of weirdness around that one. There's a lot of talk that they can merge 205 Live with SmackDown, and that SmackDown may get a third hour on like FS1. There's also talk that 205 Live guys might be merged into NXT. And then there's also talk that they're just going to fucking scratch 205 Live altogether. That
the 205 Live stuff is a good point, and something I wanted to talk about of that is on the network right now, so that does fill a live wrestling portion of the network. It's a matter of, okay, now when are you going to tape it? Are you taping that, are you holding that after SmackDown? Are you holding that after NXT? So you're basically 10 o'clock every Wednesday, go to the network, watch 205 Live from Full Sail. That could work. It could honestly work. I think there's so much talent on 205 Live that if you can give SmackDown that third hour, and even if it's on Fox Sports, that's probably the way to go. Remember when the Cruiserweight division was supposed to be part of Raw? That worked out well. I hope 205 Live does go by the wayside. I think it makes the most sense to just hold it every week after NXT, have it remain on the network, because like Triple H's hands have been more on 205 Live lately after Vince just gave up on the product. So if it remains from Full Sail, Triple H doesn't have to keep traveling every week. He's not going to be able to do this travel schedule anyway, because it's go to Raw on Monday, then you're always going to Florida on Wednesday, and then you're going to SmackDown on Friday, and then you got, the takeovers and the pay-per-views and stuff. Like, that's just the man is a machine, but that's just a lot. So at least if you give him 205 Live on Wednesday, that is something he can continue to keep an eye on. I hope 205 Live just doesn't go completely out there, because that's going to be a lot. But that's also, if it does, that's a lot more talent that, can be spread across these three brands. And if you keep these brands separate, you could make that work.
Because you could easily, like a guy like Jack Gallagher, you could transfer to the UK brand. And, you can mix a lot of guys up. And I just, I like 205 Live. I know not everybody watches it, which I think is a shame, because it's usually a really good show. But a possible move to Full Sail is something I speculated for a long time, because I think that style of show will actually get over way better at Full Sail, even after taping after NXT, because just after SmackDown, it's just like, it takes so much for those guys to get a crowd into them sometimes, because they've already seen the big stars. And now it's like, oh, the little guys are here. So it'll be interesting. I think another thing too, you kind of brought up like Progress, ICW, WXW. I think those are all viable alternatives, or just an expanded UK brand, period. You could tape more, and because apparently the big rumor with the WWE deals with those companies are they're invested into them and they have stake in it, and they have a thing to where they can allegedly buy them out at any time. And, if you buy them out and just bring in a bunch of extra talent, you could expand the UK brand easily. And you could have a 2-hour show on Wednesdays. You don't have to run it at 8 o'clock, but you could have a 2-hour block, which would still give you your 2 hours of Wednesday time. So, I think that is in play, because they're pretty serious with the UK brand, and they have those relationships. You also brought up Evolve, which we've talked about several times, which kind of is an unofficial developmental to developmental in some ways, because you have a lot of NXT guys that have worked there and continue to work dates there, which I think is a good thing, because they're getting out of Florida and getting to work in front of different crowds, which a lot of those guys that are in developmental hadn't had a chance to do, because some of them came into developmental with very little to no wrestling experience. So getting to go around with Evolve and work in front of different crowds, we talked about the improvement of the Street Profits, and it even helped Velveteen Dream. So it's like that could be a thing. And in my article I wrote, is like, you could start out the Evolve thing as like a taped best of show, to where you're airing like your best of Johnny Gargano matches and best of Keith Lee matches, and anybody you want to push that has stuff in the Evolve tape library. And then you can continue to help finance Evolve and run live events, and you tape those, and instead of them airing as iPay-per-views on WWN, you can tape those for content on the network. And you don't obviously have to use it all, but you tape a 2.5 hour live event, pretty sure you can get a good 1 hour TV show out of that. And you have to remember that Gabe Sapolsky already works with WWE, which makes it an even more viable option.
This is where also, like, if 205 Live folds, or you have talent that just isn't used, whether no matter which of the three brands it's on, and they have these independent companies that they're working with. if and when they bring them to the network. Like, why can't Arya Davari, like, he's not going to be a star on Raw, SmackDown, or NXT. Sorry, Davari. It's just probably not going to happen. He could be a regular in Progress. Like, he's still on the network for however long. His payouts, as long as they're paying him the same, I don't know like how much. He'd probably get more work because what's he working now? Maybe he works 205 Live every week. Like, you go to Progress, you're getting more work there and you're still getting paid. I mean, maybe he just likes sitting at home. I would imagine that a lot of these guys want to get paid well and work. So you can use these independent companies of, hey, you've seen this guy on 205 Live, you've seen this guy on NXT, you've seen this guy on Raw, you've seen this guy on SmackDown. He's going to be a regular here now. So that gives you more incentive to possibly sign up for this tier network. And I'm not saying Arya Davari is going to bring subscriptions to the network, but you can utilize guys like that in these independent companies to keep giving them work. They have so much at their fingertips, like so much television, whether it be really on the network. Like, they have so many possibilities with live events on the network and all this talent, there is no reason why guys should be sitting at home for 2 or 3 weeks at a time. Because once you put Evolve and Progress and WXW and whatever other company they're working with, once you put that all those companies, and they can always, strike more agreements, because if I know a lot of companies are scared of like, well, we don't want this buyout clause in there, so we're not going to do this. But if they see that, oh, hey, we're on the network, we're making a little bit more money, we're getting some WWE stars now who are actually regulars, sure, let's strike this deal. Then other companies might be more open to working with WWE.
Yeah, it's definitely an interesting time. Another one I've talked about a few times is a developmental to developmental, because obviously with NXT being on the USA Network, you're not going to have the more green workers like a Tainara Conti and other people just thrown onto the USA Network, unless it's like a 30-second squash, you know what I mean? So you still need to develop that talent, right. And depending on how things go, it could be through Evolve or through these other companies. But I also think you could explore taping a developmental show, an NXB, so to speak. Back when Ohio Valley was a WWE developmental territory, there was an unofficial developmental to developmental, and it was called Derby City Wrestling. Derby City Wrestling actually had local TV. It was populated by the OVW trainees that weren't under WWE contract. But occasionally you'd have guys like JTG who would pop in there just so he could get extra work because he felt he needed it. So Derby City Wrestling was kind of like a developmental for OVW. It was a secondary brand, so you could have like a secondary NXT brand. You could even name it something else if you needed to, but there's just so many people under contract and so many people that need TV experience that if you're not moving to the tiered stuff, which they likely are, but if you're not and you don't want to send guys to those other places, that's another thing to consider.
Yeah, whatever they do, again, they have so much at their fingertips, whether it be with independent companies, whether they want to run their own stuff. And I realize a lot of this stuff is going to cost money. And if they keep up their relationships with independent companies, it's going to cost them less because the Progresses and the Evolves are going to have to sort of pay for their own stuff. Like if they want to open up their own developmental brand, I guess you could just do it at the Performance Center and invite a bunch of family and friends and have wrestlers around and stuff. But anyway, they have almost limitless amount of options with the network and with the companies that they're working with, that whatever they do, there's just no reason for all these people under contract to not get work somewhere. And yeah, they might have bad matches on the WWE Network. It's like not everything's going to be perfect. If you do put these new developmental people on this developmental to the developmental show, or if you send them to opening matches for Evolve, the matches might not be great every single time. This is, again, a big picture thing, though. And let's be honest, no one is going to be like, I'm never watching WWE again just because Tanner Conti is having a not so great match, the opener on an Evolve show or something. Like, that's not going to get people to tune out. These people need experience, and it's hopefully going to make them better. And it's going to show you what you got with a lot of these people, because sometimes you just don't know. You might have high hopes for somebody, and then you put them on TV and it's not that good, and you're like, ooh, that was a mistake. Like, you give them all this experience, you realize, oh, this guy really shines, or this person doesn't shine quite as much. So the options are really limitless for them right now. They're Keith Lee for them right now. And like, that's what makes a lot of this even more exciting. And hopefully they do something with it. Hopefully we're not sitting here in 6 months and being like, what happened to all this stuff? They still have all this network time. What is going on here? I want to pay my $20 a month for the tiered network so I can watch Evolve.
I think too, you also have even more things you could look at. You could do rotating specials. You could do stuff like you've already done. You could do mixed match challenge on there, because you can tape before Raw or before SmackDown for those matches or whatever. I always joked you could do like 305 Live, have a Haas tournament. You could do a women's tournament like the Mae Young Classic, because they have so many fucking women under contract that aren't being used. You could use it to do a tag team tournament. And you could just tape these things at various times before or after shows, and then you just cut them together. And 1 week it's like, hey, mixed match challenge week 1. And then like next week it's like 305 Live week 1. Week 3 it's ladies night week 1. Just a various rotating thing. Like you said, with the relationships with these other companies, the amount of people they have under contract, and honestly, yeah, it'll cost a little bit of money, but money's no fucking worry right now when you're going to make over $2 billion in TV rights deals. You can spend a little bit.
No. Yeah, they have the Performance Center. They can hold a lot of these events. Dana White, this is what Dana White is sort of doing with, they launched the UFC Performance Institute, and they hold Dana White's Contender Series and all this other stuff that from there. And like, his plan is to basically run just live MMA 3-4 nights a week for like 5 hours every single night, because there's enough fighters out there, and you could just keep doing these shows, and you put it all on Fight Pass. WWE is in a similar position that they can do this stuff of, you can just run stuff from the Performance Institute or the Performance Center, or run stuff to Evolve or Progress or whatever company you're working with, and just put it all on network. Like, you should have no shortage of live wrestling. And yeah, there might be some burnout there. There probably will be a lot of burnout, but a lot of it's going to be on demand. And so you can just watch it when you want. And wrestling fans probably, like, they just want to watch wrestling. And if you want to monopolize the business, and I'm not saying this is a good thing, but if you really want to be like, hey, you don't need to go anywhere else for your wrestling. We have everything you would ever want. No matter what you're looking for in wrestling, we have it somewhere on the network or somewhere in our programming. I mean, this is the way to do it.
So, I mean, honestly, the possibilities are pretty limitless. They could do a ton of stuff, and it's going to be interesting to see what exactly they do. And again, for people that are going to go, oh, even more wrestling, blah, blah, blah. Again, you don't have to watch it all. Number 2, you don't have to watch it all live, because if it's on the network, you're going to have, all your on-demand stuff. There's nothing on like Thursday right now. There's nothing on Tuesday. So it's like, there's going to be time. I mean, maybe you're a big tag team wrestling fan. If they run a tag team wrestling special, maybe that's going to be you chilling for an hour on Thursday night. Or maybe you've heard of Progress and WXW, and that's on the network, and you're like, goddamn, I keep hearing about this, but I haven't checked it out. I've read reviews, but I haven't actually sat down to watch it. Maybe that's going to be the case for you. But I just limitless possibilities, and I think it's actually really cool, and we're heading into a really interesting and exciting period, Jeremy.
I can't wait. It's going to be, not everybody has to watch this stuff. I mean, we cover it. You're going to watch it all because you're a fucking madman on top of AEW and New Japan. I'm going to watch the majority of it, but if they do that network stuff, like, how much am I going to watch live? I don't know, but I'll probably end up binge watching a lot of stuff. Like I work for 12 hours a day in front of two screens, where sometimes I'm watching Beverly Hills 90210, so I got no problem throwing on some more wrestling. But the thing is they should just always have wrestling in front of you, and that's what WWE wants to do. They don't want you to go anywhere else for your wrestling. And yeah, I can't wait to see what they do. At the very least, we're speculating on a lot of what they do with the network and the tiers and the independent companies and all this stuff. At the very least, we are guaranteed a Wednesday Night War, and I'm most excited about that.
It's going to be a really fun time, I think, in a lot of ways, and just I'm going to be really excited to see what everybody does. And again, this is a big chance for just the various people to step up too. I mean, is Adam Cole, he's the champion right now. Is Adam Cole going to show that, he deserves to be that top guy? Who are going to be the guys in AEW to step up that, that aren't Cody and the Elite and stuff like that? Who are going to be the guys to shine and be kind of like the new names there? So it's just really I think it's a fascinating time. I'm really excited for it. So that's kind of my bottom line. Just really, really excited. So good.
Yeah, I think a lot of those guys are going to have chips on their shoulders. Kind of what I think you were alluding to is like a guy like Joey Janela is going to be like, well, fuck this. Like, let's outdo them. I think a guy like Adam Cole is going to kind of be the same way. There's going to be a lot of guys on both these companies who are going to be like, we're going to outdo them. We're going to top them more than just the top guys, because Triple H wants to put on the best show. Cody and the Bucks and Omega and Jericho want to put on the best show. I think you're going to see a lot of these other guys have that chip as well and be like, let's go out there and let's top what the other companies do. I think that's absolutely
fantastic, because I think shit like that makes everybody better. So, Jeremy, we're going to move on now. WWE brought back the King of the Ring. And we had 4 matches this week for the King of the Ring tournament. We'll quickly talk about those. First up, Samoa Joe defeated Cesaro on Raw 10 minutes via submission. Your thoughts?
Thought this match was great. I really loved it. The uppercut to start was awesome. Cesaro showed he was human. He kind of dropped Joe on the suplex spot, and I don't think I've ever seen Cesaro screw up a strength spot like that. But Cesaro's awesome. Joe is awesome. So I really enjoyed this match, and Joe picking up the win, not too huge of a surprise
at all. Yeah, I thought a good match. I loved the hot start to it. I thought it was a really good, hard hitting and physical. Just style wise, it worked really well for these two. And I saw a lot of people wanting to rag on Cesaro for that suplex spot. But the thing is too is I felt overall in the context of the match that it worked really well, because it's one of those matches where they're beating the shit out of each other, and people were like, "Oh, I wish people would sell or show that they're tired or beat down a little bit." And yeah, I'm sure it wasn't intentional, because it didn't look great. But the fact is in the context of the match, it kind of made sense that deep into that match, he had trouble lifting up the much larger man.
Right. I didn't think it took anything away from the match. And I thought Cesaro, he played it off well. And then he even kind of afterwards kind of gave some deep breaths and seemed like he even took it down a gear to really show his exhaustion and sell that, all right, that's why I dropped him. I am exhausted because this is a hard hitting match. And maybe I, just read too deep into all of that, but Cesaro is good enough to where he could certainly pull that off. I was just more shocked that I've never seen Cesaro screw something like that up. So I was like, oh shit. The man is actually human. He's still awesome. I don't think any less of him. And the crowd didn't completely shit on it either. They didn't chant "you fucked up" or anything. It was just kind of stunning to see, because you don't always see that from Cesaro. It certainly wasn't like a Ricochet Elias thing where it's like, ooh, that just looked bad, and no matter how you try to spin it, that one did nobody any favors. With this one, it's like, all right, I can get why it
Exactly, I
happened.
agree. So, but yeah, I thought it was good stuff. They worked pretty much the style match I had hoped for, and just great win for Joe. I kind of hate to see Cesaro still floundering because. And again, this isn't a make Cesaro world champion thing. I think you can do a lot more with a guy like Cesaro. And I think you should because, I mean, no offense, he's not getting any younger.
Yeah, I wish they would do a whole lot more with Cesaro, but unfortunately, I think that ship is kind of
Fuck
send him
yes,
to NXT.
actually. I'm all for that. Tons of guys he could work with there. But next up on Raw, we had Cedric Alexander defeating Sami Zayn, 3 minutes and 45 seconds. Solid for the time given. Great win for Cedric, who largely dominated. And unfortunately for Sammy, another loss in pretty quick fashion.
Yeah, it's kind of to be expected. It would have been nicer if they'd gotten more time because I think they could have a hell of a match. But they're telling a story with Sammy that he's losing and now he's fed up with it. And now he's just going to hire a Japanese hitman. So in that context, it worked.
Yeah, and obviously really good for Cedric. And reports are that Paul Heyman likes him a lot, and so hopefully Cedric will be seeing some good things moving forward. Over to SmackDown on Tuesday night, Andrade defeated Apollo Crews 9 minutes 50 seconds via pin to kick off their part of the King of the Ring. Thought they had a good match, mix of hard hitting and good athletic stuff. I like when Apollo Crews actually gets some time to remind people that he's a good wrestler instead of like 2-minute nothing matches or not being on the show at all. Andrade, obviously really great. So, the expected result, I think, for everybody here, and Andrade making a run for the King, hopefully.
Hopefully Andrade in the finals, or at least making to the semifinals, would be awesome. Apollo, it was nice that he got a chance to shine because, like you said, when he gets that chance, he's very good in the ring. And this is another match that had that like really hot start, and they've done this. They did it in the Buddy Murphy Daniel Bryan match as well, and I like this. I don't want them to completely overdo it with like, okay, big move right off the bat and then a pinfall, because then it gets kind of old. But because it's new right now, it works.
Yeah, this match started off Apollo Crews like murdered him with a lariat and turned him inside out, and then you talked about the Buddy Murphy match. The bell rang and he just fucking flew across the ring with a V trigger and about killed Bryan, which was great as well.
Yeah, and again, though, like the hot starts, I'm 100% fine with. I don't need like a lockup every single time, but at the same time, you don't want to just overdo them, or do it and actually.
Yeah, no, I would not mind seeing Buddy Murphy picking up a flash pin on somebody by just murdering them with a V trigger in the first 5 seconds. So.
I wish there were just kind of more flash pins off of like definitely. Quick strikes.
I agree. And again, that's a variety thing. It's like, I always talk about like there are great times where like we talked about with Cody and Darby Allin where like a draw plays really well, or you can use a referee stoppage really well, and you can use various things to just change it up, and it's kind of nice when you get that. Like every once in a while, it's like I know it seems like really lame, but like I like when like somebody goes off the top and totally crashes and burns, and then they like get cradled right away for the win. Because then it shows it's like, hey, that was a high-risk move that failed and the person paid for it. So yeah, there's all kind of finishes that it would be great if that we saw a little more of. That's like one reason I like that AEW has the draw already kind of into their canon right now. Because there are times where a draw is a perfect booking decision and just plays really well. Because it feels different, especially if you don't do it all the time.
We're gonna see a lot of draws in AEW with the matches they're booking.
Dude, I don't want to. I hope not. And then the final King of the Ring tournament match here was Elias defeating Kevin Owens in 13.5 minutes. The gimmick here on SmackDown was Kevin Owens was meeting with Shane, trying to get him to remove his fine. And then Shane told him he would reconsider, but that if he ever touched a WWE official again, he was going to be fired on the spot. So, of course, what happened during this match, Jeremy? Shane McMahon came out the ringside, later revealed that he had a referee shirt on, tried to fuck over Owens, distracted him, and that led to Elias cradling him, and Shane actually being a heel referee and fast counting him in like half a second.
My bracket got busted on this one because I thought they would kind of do this in the finals with Drew beating Owens. Although I did say that Shane costing Owens in the first round was a possibility, and that's what happened here. I don't have any desire with the Shane and Owens feud. It makes sense. I'm not saying that it's illogical because it's really not. It's just I don't need any more Shane McMahon.
Yeah, I agree. But yeah, I did like that Shane actually did a heel referee gimmick and totally screwed him on the fast count. Because how many times do you see like the heel referee come out and then they just count normally? And it's like the biggest bullshit in the world. And it makes no sense. You should try to count as fast as possible. And seriously, like he counted 3 in like under a second. It's pretty impressive actually. So I did appreciate that.
Why were you so impressed? This man has the fastest hands in wrestling history. You've seen his strikes. It's not surprising at all that he could count that quickly.
Yeah. Sure. Shane McMahon, most decorated striker in WWE history.
He is.
But no, I mean, I did appreciate that. So that is week 1 of the King of the Ring, Jeremy. I'm hoping for a good Andrade run in this because I just really want him to get a direction and to play off of those wins over Ray because I think if they don't, you've kind of wasted those wins. And if you're going to beat Ray like that, you have to make those wins mean something.
I don't have the bracket in front of me. Is Andrade facing the Gable and Shelton winner? Okay, then he almost feels like a lock to make the semifinals because I can't imagine they put Gable or Shelton. Yeah, and
I'd love to see Andrade versus Gable. That'd be really good.
That would be great. I mean, even Shelton would be fun, but yeah, Andrade against Gable would be awesome. Give that match some time, knock it off with the short jokes, and yeah, that's all for it. And I'm confirming that he is facing the winner of Gable and Shelton. So I would be very surprised if Andrade wasn't in the semifinals.
All right, so that is the quick King of the Ring thoughts. Jeremy, I know some people are going to be surprised to hear this, but there are Ring of Honor shows this weekend.
I'm surprised to hear this, and I'm agitated that you're making me review these or preview these. It's 1 o'clock in the morning. Oh, come on, Larry.
Jeremy. If we don't do it, who will?
Nobody, because nobody's going to watch these shows and nobody's going to attend these shows. You're going to have to throw a shoe at me to get me to wake up halfway through
I didn't say I'd make you review them. We're just going to talk about them.
Thank God, because I don't know if I'm going to watch them. I will. If you want me to review them, I will gladly sacrifice my time. I'm not watching them live, that's for sure. I will fast forward through a lot of it. If you really want to review them, Larry, because that's the kind of person I am, and that's how much I love you. But please don't make me do that.
We're good. No, we will talk about them. They'll give a little quick preview on the weekend shows. First show is Saturday night.
Very good.
ROH Saturday night at Center Stage, which is a TV taping. 5 matches announced so far. Jeremy, we'll start off with your favorite, the Women of Honor, Angelina Love and Sumi Sakai.
Nope.
Jeremy's stance on Women of Honor maintains Angelina Love should win. She's being positioned for a title shot. Next match will make you happy, though, Jeremy. It's a good one. Marty Scurll versus Bandito.
I am excited for Marty Scurll and Bandito. I like both of these guys. Someone has to lose, which is kind of weird. But, I figure Bandito wins because Scurll is just kind of there right now and probably leaving in a couple of months, and maybe they've finally figured out that, hey, we've got Bandito, let's actually do something with him. But the match should be
Yeah,
great
I'm looking
as long
forward
as
to
they get
this
some
one.
time.
I actually have Marty Skrull winning this one. I have a whole weekend booking planned out, so it'll make sense later.
All right, obviously you put more thought into this than me, because I didn't know these shows
Well,
existed, and you did.
I know.
You cheated.
I have to do what I have to do, Jeremy. Got to stay one step ahead of you, man. So next up, there is a number one contenders match for the TV title. The winner will face Shane Taylor the next night. And this match is New Japan star Chase Owens versus PJ Black versus LSG from Coast to Coast.
I don't know.
I'm actually going Chase Owens here. I almost called him Kevin Owens. Going Chase Owens here.
Kevin Owens. Kevin Owens would be awesome. Him versus Shane Taylor.
That would be a great
greatest match of all time.
But I actually like Chase Owens winning here because he hasn't won a lot in ROH, but I think if you're going to have a title defense the next night, it's better not to burn one of your regular roster members, and it gives Chase Owens something to do and gives him a rare ROH win before Shane Taylor destroys him.
That's fair. Yeah, and then ROH can be like, they probably just beats LSG, and then ROH can have Shane Taylor kill the New Japan guy and be like, see, ROH is actually good compared to New Japan. Shane Taylor beat Chase Owens. Shane Taylor beat like the forgotten member of Bullet Club.
So next up, Brody King and PCO versus Mark Haskins and Tracy Williams.
Should be good. I like all these guys, and I probably Lifeblood again. They seem like they're kind of turning things around, and so I figure Lifeblood will win this. But you seem to have a booking plan. So is it going to be a clean sweep for Villain Enterprises?
I have Brody King and PCO winning here.
I see. I'm looking at the card for the next night. Okay. I see why you're doing this.
Yeah, I've really enjoyed the matches between these two stables. They've been really good in the highlights of some of the recent shows. I expect another good match here, possibly even great depending on how wild they get and if PCO tries to kill himself. So that's always a...
PCO always tries to kill himself.
Next up is the annual Champions versus Challengers match. Champions Matt Taven, Shane Taylor, and the Briscoes will face off with challengers Jay Lethal, Jeff Cobb, Kenny King, and Roosh.
A lot of things you can do in this match. I think the challengers probably win to set up the guaranteed title shots, and they don't seem to have a problem beating Taven in these tag team matches. We saw PCO beat him. So Roosh scoring a victory over Taven here could certainly set up the September or whenever that show is. Yep. It's September, right? Their next big show. Yeah. So they can set that up guaranteed here with a Roosh victory. But anyway, it's likely that it's just a challenger wins to set up a championship.
I think the
match.
challengers definitely win. It's either going to be Cobb or most likely Roosh picking up the win. So I think that's how they play that. And then the next night we have ROH Honor for All 2019. We start off, speaking of Roosh versus Vinny Marseglia.
This should go 12 seconds.
Yeah, it's like, I try not to be overly disrespectful, but for the purposes of this match, Roosh is about to challenge Matt Taven for the ROH title. Vinny Marseglia is a geek here. He's a Matt Taven minion, only here to lose. He's totally expendable. Should not go long. Roosh should kind of just run through him, hit all of his offense, pin him, and that's that. So then we have Shane Taylor is going to face either PJ Black's Chase Owens or LSG. I think it's going to be Chase Owens. No matter who it is, though, Shane Taylor is going to win.
Yeah, I would agree. Maybe if it's PJ Black, there's a little bit more intrigue, but they're not putting the title on Chase Owens or LSG. If they put the title on Chase Owens, then they should just cease to exist as a company and just, because they're just cuckolded by ROH or by New Japan.
I say that as a Chase Owens fan. I like Chase Owens, but you can't put the title on him, man.
I said that's not a knock against Chase Owens. It's a knock on why would you do that with your relationship with New Japan? Like we've talked about it a million times of ROH just they're treated like completely secondary by New Japan. So why would you put your title on a New Japan guy here?
Next up is the Deny or Defy match. Champion Matt Taven versus Jeff Cobb versus Kenny King versus Jay Lethal. It's an elimination match. If the world champion wins, whoever he last eliminated cannot challenge for the world championship while he is still the champion. Should one of the three competitors who are not the champion win, they will receive a future ROH World Championship shot. I think this one is pretty simple. You already have Taven and Roosh set up for the next pay-per-view. Jay Lethal, I don't see them going back to him right away for a title shot. Kenny King just had a title shot in a triple threat. Don't need to see him. I think this is set up for the big Jeff Cobb win. And the Jeff Cobb is going to win, setting up a redemption tour where he goes on a rampage, just fucking wrecking fools for the next couple months. And he is going, I'm calling it now, Jeff Cobb is going to beat Matt Taven for the championship at Final Battle.
They're going to have Taven beat Roosh? That would be dumb. Did Kenny King get his title shot by winning that Battle Royal at MSG?
Manhattan Mayhem. He added himself to Lethal versus Taven.
Why'd he do that? Why didn't he get a one-on-one match? Dude, he won this Battle Royal and then decided the triple threat would be the best idea. Okay. Matt Taven's going to win.
Fair enough.
I'd be cool with Jeff Cobb winning, and then I just feel like they're just gonna be like, yeah, Matt Taven. Didn't he win a Deny or Defy match earlier this year? Yeah, he'll win. They're just gonna have Matt Taven beat the entire roster.
Next up, Jeremy, is a rematch from the Crockett Cup. Dem boys, the Briscoes versus the Rock and Roll fucking Express in 2019.
This match fucked at the Crockett Cup too. I love this match, and it didn't go very long, but the Briscoes have no problem bumping and selling and making Rock and Roll Express look good. Rock and Roll Express are obviously like 80 years old at this point, but they can still move. They busted out the Hurricane Rana at the Crockett Cup match, and I'm looking forward to this match. This is the best match of the weekend. Yeah, they had a good match at the
Crockett Cup, and like, dude, it's 2019, and my man Ricky Morton is fucking doing suicide dives and Canadian destroyers and shit. So it's like, I'm all about this. And as you said, the Briscoes, they love these guys. They look up to them. They sold their asses off for them. So, yeah, I mean, I just, you know what, give the Rock and Roll Express a little bit of shine. Let Ricky Morton play Ricky Morton, maybe bleed again. Let him make the comeback, hit the double drop kick. The Briscoes are going to retain. It should be fun again. I've seen some people are down on this match again, but it was really fun at the Crockett Cup. So piss off, man. This was fun.
Why would you be down on this match? Who gets mad at the Rock and Roll Express still wrestling in 2019? Who gets mad at the Briscoes wrestling? Like, we're talking about one of the greatest teams of all time. Okay, it's 2019, but they can still kind of do things. It busted out Canadian Destroyers earlier this year. They're better than half the ROH roster, and the Briscoes are one of the greatest teams of all times too. Nobody should get mad at this match. This is like the only good thing ROH has going is they have the Rock and Roll Express against the Briscoes.
So, again, probably be a good match. Probably won't be very long, which is fine. Doesn't need to be because, again, book to your strengths. And then the main event is the latest chapter in Villain Enterprises versus Lifeblood, ROH six-man champions. Villain Enterprises defending against Lifeblood. I have Lifeblood losing the two matches on night one. And then I think this is where they finally get the big win, Jeremy. Finally win some gold, which I think may be the catalyst for the end or split or change in leadership of Villain Enterprises, or at least the start of it, because Marty's contract is coming to an end in the next couple months, although he is locked up to work the UK tour in October.
That would certainly. I saw why you had them lose on the first night because I could tell you're going with the title change here, and that's fine. Marty, like the situation with Marty is weird because we all assume that he's going to AEW, but NXT's probably going to make a strong push for him. I wouldn't be shocked if NWA makes a really strong push for him because he's got the relationship with all this. They're doing a weekly show. I hesitate to call it television because by all indications, it's not going to be like a major cable network or something. I wouldn't be shocked if it's like on YouTube. But they're making moves regardless for a weekly show. Like Marty's going to have options. And as we've discussed a million times, why the hell would you stay with ROH given what they've done with you and the way they kind of dicked you over at MSG. So the split makes sense. Flip Gordon taking over Villain Enterprises makes sense. Does Marty have that trademarked? He's the villain. They call it Mercenary Enterprises since that's Flip's nickname. Lifeblood winning is fine. The match should be good because all six of these guys are good.
Yeah, the Marty thing is so weird. I mean, I'm sure the NWA will try to get him, but I don't see what the hell Billy can give him. I mean,
well, this is what we've discussed is if you're Marty, you go to AEW, okay, you're probably going to be good there because those are your friends and they're going to treat you well. You go to NXT, they'll probably treat you fairly well. But you go to like NWA, like they're gonna treat you as the second biggest star in the company behind Nick Aldis, and maybe that appeals to Marty.
I guess. If I'm Marty Scurll though, I can't imagine, waiting to get out of this contract to go somewhere else and picking the NWA. I mean, AEW is going to pay well. He's going to be with his friends. WWE is paying really well because they have all the money in the world, it feels like. So it's just, I don't know. I mean, I'm sure Impact will try to make a play for him too. But I don't know what they can offer him.
It's AEW is the most logical choice because you're going to get money and you're going to be with friends. And you're going to be like no less than a mid card. But Marty's like, he's not going to be over Omega or Cody or Moxley. Even I don't know where they see Marty in the pecking order of things, but one would assume he would still be like a mid card, upper mid card guy. But Marty might just be like, I would rather be a bigger fish in a small pond than a small fish in a big pond. We don't know the guy's mindset. And it could be a thing of, hey, I'll kind of be more NWA, but I'll still kind of make appearances in AEW because they might establish some sort of relationship. The wrestling world is so fucking weird now with everybody working with everybody that I don't rule anything out.
It's he's definitely going to have a lot of choices, which, again, that's...
Yeah, his contract is definitely coming up at the right time.
Because, like I said, I mean... think about it. I mean, ROH is going to make a push to keep him. New Japan might even make more of an offer to get him exclusive. You never know. So you never know with those. You have the NWA. I'm sure MLW and Impact would try to make a play for him because he's really popular, and they could use a popular act and a good wrestler. And then obviously AEW with his friends, and WWE is the money. So yeah, it's going to be really interesting to see where he ends up. And like you said, neither of us know the guy, so we don't know what's going to be the most important. He may just want to go and hang out with his friends for 3 years in AEW.
It's also possible that he, we talk about these long-term contracts and we all assume just everybody signing a long-term contract. I think there's value in a short-term contract that companies aren't exactly seeing, especially companies like ROH and NWA. And I don't know what the deals are with NWA or Impact. Like every Impact deal is a multi-year deal. Like what is wrong with a 6-month deal if you can just get this guy for 6 months or a 1-year deal or 9-month deal, like whatever it is, like you can offer him that and then kind of prove like, hey, we will treat you very well. We'll give you a raise after this. And if you're not happy with it, we at least got you in here. We got our buzz up for a little bit. You can maybe turn yourself into a bigger star because we are going to treat you well. Like we're not going to bring you in and then bury you for 9 months. And then you can possibly make even like you might be looked at as an even bigger star when your contract is up. And so these other companies might offer you more money. Like I think there's value in short-term contracts that not enough companies are looking at, or at least it doesn't seem like they're looking at because it seems like everything is just multi-year deals. But there can be value in those short-term contracts. Like, look, think of it as a sports team. Okay, you want your superstars, you want to sign those guys to long-term deals. But if you're not sure if he's like a superstar guy, or you kind of want to see what you can do, or he's a reclamation project or whatever, you give him just a 1-year deal, or I guess a 10-day contract if you're in the G League or something. But you can use those short contracts to your advantage if you pitch it right, and if you just make the right offer and you appeal to what he might be interested in.
Yeah. So again, just more interesting times coming up, Jeremy.
Oh, the wrestling world is nutso, and it's going to get even more nutso, honestly. Like we think it's bad now, and not bad in like a bad way, but we think like it's crazy now. But then, you got the big All Out weekend in a couple of weeks. You got NXT starting a few weeks after that, and then AEW starting right after that. And really, once AEW starts, like everything is just going crazy come October 2nd, because right after that's SmackDown on Fox, and who knows what's going to happen after that. The fall is me and you, people who cover this sport, people who passionately watch everything. We're not going to have lives.
Pretty much. So, I mean, that's how it's going to boil down to, but it's going to be a lot of fun.
It is. I'm looking forward to it. I don't think our wives are looking forward to it.
Mine is at least come to terms with the work schedule, and she works crazy hours too, so it's all right. But yeah, it's I'm looking forward to a lot of it. I'm looking forward to see how the business keeps changing, and just we talked about again more places for people to work, more viable places to make money. Giving the wrestlers a position of power to negotiate for once. Just a lot of cool things going on. Just plus the fact that we're going to get, more content, and like the AEW stuff has been really good. NXT has a really good track record. Can they continue that with a weekly 2-hour show? We're going to find out soon enough. So, I mean, but there's a lot of potential for a lot of great stuff. A lot of questions on what might be done with the network in terms of replacing NXT or adding content or the tiered level. A lot of questions on is LAX actually AEW bound? Are they going to be Jericho's partners? Where is Marty Scurll going to go? Just a lot of cool stuff to talk about.
Plenty of cool stuff to talk about, and we will, I'm sure, be here at least once a week, probably twice a week to talk about all this stuff.
So, Jeremy, thank you as always.
Yes.
I want to remind everybody you were listening to the 411 on Wrestling podcast. You can follow us on iTunes, Stitcher, Spotify, Google Play, YouTube, and of course the 411mania.com website. Please make sure to subscribe to the show, share it around on social media if you have a chance, and please leave us a 5-star review on iTunes.